Hello everyone, my name is Nathan and welcome to my second ever YouTube video. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about my goals for 2022, as well as my motivations for doing so and the specific sort of methodologies that I decided to use because I think that's more interesting than the goals themselves, although I will talk quite a bit about them because a lot of them have to do with personal projects, which probably will become relevant in later videos. So think of this as sort of a preview of what to expect from my videos in 2022. So I actually got the idea for this video from McKay Gray, which if you don't know, they're a pair of content creators here on YouTube. They do a bunch of things related to comics and creating comics, and I would highly recommend them. I'll leave a link to their channel in the description. But they made a video last month talking about their goals from last year, and it sort of inspired me to create my own list of goals for the year. And I've sort of copying some elements of their format for mine, which I'll get into here in a bit. But just to put that right out there, like, this is not really my idea. This is their idea. I'm just sort of copying it and remixing it in my own way, and I'll talk about specific changes I've made in a second. Before I wrote down anything, I wanted to figure out what my intentions were, like what my purpose for setting these goals was, because I feel that that is important. And so I stumbled upon sort of two key ideas that really jumped out to me as to reasons why I was doing this. The first was to provide direction. I am somebody who is really terrible at decision making. This is just something that I've realized about the way that my brain works, but I suffer from sort of decision paralysis a lot of the time. And so I wanted to use these goals in order to help inform my decision making and preventing me from being lost or frustrated or feeling like my, intentions are aimless. So that was a big part of it. And then the second part was to inspire action. I'm somebody who really needs motivation in order to work on a project. Like, I have tried to work on projects without motivation before, and it doesn't work. It really doesn't. I am hugely unproductive. It ends up being a complete and utter waste of my time, and it's exhausting, and it makes me feel terrible. And so I want to use these goals in order to motivate me to focus on specific things and to make progress in the things that I want and that I care about. So that was the second big reason. Now, for the actual formatting of these goals, I based it loosely on McKay Gray's format in their video, where I split things into three categories. The first category being primary goals, which I think they called must-have goals or something like that. But these are the things I want to focus on specifically. These are sort of the main goals. I guess these would be your sort of archetypical New Year's resolutions type of thing, like stuff you really seriously commit to doing. And the second is secondary goals. That's a little bit redundant. These are other things that would be nice. I think in their video they refer to them as bonus goals. These are the bonus goals. If there are other things that would be nice to do, but aren't, necessarily required. And then the final section was ideal goals, which they called like dream goals. These are just things that would be nice, but that you don't have a ton of control over. They're sort of like up in the air, or, depend upon chance or other people's decision making or things beyond your control. So that was sort of the formatting for the goals. And then after deciding on my goals, I also came up with a theme for the year, which is a cool thing that I've heard about from several content creators as an alternative to New Year's resolutions, yearly themes. The idea is that instead of, typical New Year's resolutions or whatever, instead you give the year a theme, which is like a word that like describes your intentions, which sounds vague and all that, and it is. But I think it's really helpful for me because my goals tend to be very vague. I mean, the goals that I wrote down were obviously very specific because that's their purpose. But the yearly theme acts as an overarching goal, which for me tends to be far more vague. Like, for example, last year's theme for me was trying. As part of that, I ended up doing monthly challenges for the entire year. So I ended up doing 12 different challenges, one each month of 2021. And the challenge for the last month was, of course, to make my first ever YouTube video and try that out for scale. I've learned a ton of things from that first video, which you can go back and watch on my channel. It's terrible. You probably should watch it. It's 30 minutes long. It's way too long. I'm going to try and keep this video much shorter. So that was sort of my plan starting out with things. So now we can move on to the goals themselves. Okay, it's time for goals. This is the fun part. Let's go. Okay. So First off, we have the primary goals. In order of priority, first up on the primary goals is post a YouTube video at least once a month. This one should not come as a surprise to anybody who's watched my previous video, but my intention is to post a video every single month of 2022, at least once a month. I'm hoping to do a little bit better than that, potentially, and have some extra videos here and there, but my intention is to do it at least once a month. This is like my number one goal for 2022, which is why it's at the top of the list here. This is the one goal that I'm like, I want to keep to this. Absolutely. Like, at the end of the year, I want to have 12 new videos on this channel. I want to do that. I feel like this should be pretty self-explanatory. I'm trying to kickstart this channel and sort of learn what it takes to be a content creator and try this whole video creation thing out. And so this is super important for that. Sort of having a schedule and doing things regularly, getting into the habit of doing it. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory. This is one of the boring goals. Primary goal number 2, finish the Dracome languages, specifically the phonology and grammar. So the context for this goal is that I have been working on a world-building project for a sort of epic fantasy series that I've been planning for a couple of years now. And part of that world building is languages, because I've gotten super into conlanging, which is building artificial languages, short for constructed language. So I've been building a family of like 9 languages that exist in this world. And they're super important to the story, partially because the story revolves a lot around the cultures of the people that speak these languages, and also about communication. And so like things like, language barriers are a pivotal part of the story, and one of the necessary functions that it needs to serve in the story is I should be able to, write entire conversations or, sentences and paragraphs in other languages, right? And so I am going through the process of actually building these languages to the point of being functional, like to the point that you could speak them if you wanted. You could hold a conversation IRL with these languages, which might seem crazy to some, but I've really enjoyed the process of creating the languages, even though I've scrapped most of the progress like 3 times now. I'm on like the 4th iteration of the languages, but this time I'm sort of dialed things back in terms of the scale of the project. So anyway, that's all to do with the conlanging side of things. I'll talk more about the actual story itself later, because there's another goal that has to do with that. But yeah, my intention is to build essentially 9 complete languages in a year. Is that too ambitious? Probably. Yeah, probably too ambitious. But I've made things significantly simpler than they were before, so I think it's not too unrealistic of a goal. So that brings us to primary goal number 3, which is to complete Lyria reference sheets. So this is also one that requires a little bit of explanation. Lyria is an even older project of mine. In fact, it's probably one of my oldest projects. Lyria is a comic series that I have been planning for at least 4 years now, maybe 5. It's been a while. It's very old. And it's gone through a ton of different iterations, but it's finally starting to get to the point where I actually feel like I can start working on it, but not quite to the point where I think I can commit to really making the entire comic. This is something I went back and forth on, but like I just can't commit to actually starting Lyria this year in 2022. I'm already making this commitment to basically work on content creation like this every single day. Lyria would have to be a project like that I would work on every day or fairly regularly over the week, and I just can't commit to doing both of those at the same time. It's just not within my abilities at the current moment. That might have to be a goal for 2023, but in order to get started on that process, I want to create some character reference sheets for the main cast of the series and some extra new faces that turn up in sort of the first phase or arc of the story. The premise of Lyria is that there's these bunch of cute, cartoony, furry characters that all get into, hijinks and slapstick humor and stuff like that, where not everything is totally as it seems. So yeah. Okay, then we're on to the secondary goals. So number 1 on this list is to run an RPG campaign with an existing system. this is also requires a little bit of explanation. So I love tabletop RPGs, and I have gotten more and more into participating in tabletop role playing over the last couple of years, and I have sort of run into a problem, which is that most of the RPG system campaigns that I'm a part of, I am the GM. I've sort of become the forever GM kind of my group in a way, and although I love to be the GM, I have realized that there are some massive flaws with the way that I GM my games, that I run them, and I have not quite figured out how to solve those problems, and I don't know when I will solve those problems, if ever. But I want to set the intention to try and do that. And if you're wondering why I said with an existing system, like, oh, what else would you do? That's because I am a game designer by trade, and so part of the reason I got into tabletop RPGs was by creating them myself. Because, yeah, that's something that I do for fun, is just build entire role-playing systems from scratch, because it's super fun. But unfortunately, those are the systems that I tend to run, is the one that I've made, because, of course, you have to playtest it somehow, so that was mostly what I was running. But that causes its own series of problems. And so I'm like, this year, I want to try and run something in an existing system and try and avoid those problems. Yada, yada, yada. Long story short, I want to try and improve my jamming style and run a campaign that actually is fun for everyone. So, secondary goal number 2. Write a rough draft of Dracome, Book 1. So, this is where I should explain the premise of Dracome. So, Dracome is based around the city of Dracome. That's where the name comes from. And the city of Dracome is set in a pseudo-hard fantasy world that's closer to an alternate universe, but it has a bunch of sort of anthropomorphic fantasy races. That's really the only fantasy element to it, is like there are non-human races. In fact, one of the premises to it is that there are no humans in this world. There's only fantasy races. And there is 6 different races, I think. Dragonkind, which are kind of like D&D Dragonborn, but they don't have any wings, and they're much closer to like lizard people. There is kobolds, which are like small lizard people. There is the wolf folk, or wolf kind. These are all like placeholder names, obviously. But they're, again, wolf people. There's like feline cat people. Then there's fox people. I think that's it. Oh, right, and then there's the sea folk, which are like dolphin people. So there's all these races, and Dracum is like this massive sort of Rome-esque city that is the center of a massive empire. Run by the Dragonkind. They have this big sprawling empire, and Dracum is like the capital of the empire. And the premise is that Dracum kind of sucks. Not kind of. Definitely sucks. Everything about it sucks. They have this like strict authoritarian government led by the Dragonkind, who are like just these vicious warlords that kill anybody that oppose them. And it's terrible. Everything sucks. But the idea is that it shows the world from a variety of different perspectives and from different races, from all different walks of life in Dracum, and sort of giving the audience a sort of wide view of the sort of world of Dracum, and using it to sort of point out facts about sort of modern society, society as a whole, that are flawed or that we misinterpret. It's sort of meant to have ideological theme to it that's all about like society and culture and how it controls us and makes people terrible. So yeah, that's Dracome. Hey, future Nathan here. It was at this point during the drawing that I realized I had made a fatal error. I used the wrong setting on the bucket fill tool and ended up replacing the color in all previous illustrations with pure white. By the time I had realized that the mistake had been made, it was too late to reverse it. To say that this was a major setback would be an understatement. I had to stop working on the video for almost a week and couldn't bring myself to continue the drawings. In the end, I have decided to abandon the stupid sketches and make these crappy stickers instead so that I can talk with you more frankly. The reality is, I am currently a mess. I'm currently in the process of changing my diet in order to fix indigestion and other digestive issues. Part of that has led to insomnia, and from it, a general feeling of exhaustion and irritability. The result is that I was just not in a place to finish this video, or at least not in the way that I had originally planned it. Partially because of all of these issues, and partially because of rushed decisions that I made in the process of this video. There are a couple of changes that I wish to make to the format of my goals and to this video. The first of those changes was to make posting a YouTube video at least once a month my one and only primary goal, with everything else being a secondary goal. This just aligns better with my intentions, as I mentioned, in order to help me direct my focus and motivate me. I need to have a clear primary goal, and so I've decided to limit it to just one goal and shift everything else to secondary goals. I've also decided to not share my ideal goals, to keep the video short, and also because they are very personal. I think the previous section talking about what's going on currently is enough heart-to-heart for this video, I think. Write a rough draft of Draken Book 1 has also become just write a rough draft of a novel, more generally. I still would like to work on Draken, but it's not really the book that matters, but rather the intention and the goal of writing, so I wanted to make it more general. Yeah, long story short, my life is just a mess. I'm a mess. And the making of this video ended up being a lot harder than I was intending. I wanted this to be a very short, easy process. But as I often do, I ended up overcomplicating it and rushing it. And the end result was, well, inevitably getting overwhelmed and not knowing what to do about it. And now a video that really, frankly, should have only taken me a couple weeks, quite honestly, to make, is probably going to take this entire month to make. But yeah, that's what happens when you jump into the deep end and try something that you've never done before. So I look forward to learning even more from my third video. Oh boy. Wow, if this ain't a learning experience, I don't know what is. That just about sums it up. So now I guess it would be a good time to segue to the outro. So what do you guys think? Has any of this inspired you to set some goals of your own, or motivated you to go about it in a different way than you usually do? If so, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. Subscribe for more content like this, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!